Greetings and welcome back to EDUC771 Analyzing Educational Research Week 5. This week we will discuss Chapter 5, Sampling. Week 5 Class Announcements. Week 4 Reflections. Thank you for posting your Week 4 reflections. It was a pleasure to learn more about the schools where you teach, your research interest, and something you wanted to share with your classmates. If you haven't done so, please remember to post your information by Tuesday night. Research Source Assignment. As the deadline approaches for this assignment, I would like to provide a few reminders. I noticed that I provided the incorrect due date on the first slide of the library research guide video, so I will make the correction and repost the video in your Week 5 assignments folder. Please listen to the video in its entirety in order to complete the assignment correctly. 2 examples of how to list your sources you have identified are listed on the last 2 slides of the video. I will go over one example in this video on how to complete the assignment. Chapter 5 Reading. Please make sure you read Chapter 5 in your textbook. This week's video is a little shorter and will quickly review sampling designs. Research Source Example. Topic/question of interest. Make sure the heading of your paper lists your topic or question of interest. It is always okay to go back and change your topic, but make sure you notify me and make sure your sources are related to your topic of interest. Source. Make sure your sources are numbered 1 through 10. List each source in APA style. You will need to familiarize yourself with this format, as you will need to format your literature review, action research, and capstone in APA style. You may choose to utilize an online resource or purchase the book from the bookstore of your choice. I have provided a link for either option. You do not have to purchase the APA book. You can utilize the online information I have listed in your Week 5 assignments folder. Please list near your source if the article is a primary or secondary source, if it is a qualitative or quantitative study, and if it is peer-reviewed. If you do not list this on your assignment, I will send it back to you without a grade. This part must be completed. Review Week 3 assignments folder for examples on how to identify primary versus secondary sources and examples of qualitative versus quantitative sources. Abstract. If an abstract is listed, paste the abstract under the source listed. If no abstract is provided, state in your resource assignment near the source, no abstract is provided. Week 5 assignments. Watch Week 5 PowerPoint video. Complete Chapter 5 review problems. There is no chapter activity or reflection this week. Remember, the CITI course certification is due on October the 4th. Remember, the research resource assignment is due on October the 11th. I have placed the video in your week 3 and 4 assignments folder and will paste it again in your week 5 assignments folder. And finally, continue with your Chapter 6 textbook reading. Our primary focus in Chapter 5 is to discuss the various designs or methods used in sampling. Social science research is generally about inferring patterns of behaviors within specific populations. Since we cannot study entire populations because of feasibility and cost constraints, we must select a representative sample from the population of interest for observation and analysis. It is extremely important to choose a sample that is truly representative of the population so that the inferences derived from the sample can be generalized back to the population of interest. What is sampling? The desire in taking a sample is to learn about a larger group, the population. This population is usually the group we want to generalize to. The sampling frame is a set of units the researcher will take the sample from. Ideally, the sampling frame is the same as the population of interest. A sample is the actual set of units selected for observation. The sampling design can aid in obtaining a representative sample of the population. That is, a sample whose attributes are similar to the population of interest. Now, in your text, they actually use a term called elements, but for the sake of using universal terms, we will talk in terms of population, sampling frame, and sample. We will not use the term elements. Sampling errors occur when you have improper and biased sampling. Therefore, in order to control for sampling errors, researchers use various probability sampling designs or methods. I will discuss 4 probability sample designs and 4 non-probability sample designs in this video. Probability and non-probability designs. Probability sampling method is a design in which every unit in the population has a chance or non-zero probability of being selected in the sample, and this chance can be accurately determined. This sampling technique is more desirable when the goal is generalizability. Non-probability sampling is often used in qualitative research. This type of sampling is also used in quantitative methods in which some units of the population have zero chance of selection or where the probability of selection cannot be accurately determined. The first probability design we will discuss is simple random sampling, SRS. A simple random sample is a sample in which all units in the sampling frame have an equal probability of selection. For example, consider the case where 10 out of 100 houses in a neighborhood are to be chosen as a sample. The number of each house is written on pieces of paper. All of the 100 pieces are placed in a basket, and one randomly chooses 10 different pieces of paper from the basket. The chosen 10 numbers will be considered a random sample. The second probability design is systematic random sampling, which involves taking every nth subject in your sampling frame or survey population. There are 3 steps in this process. Number 1, calculate sampling interval. Number 2, selection of sample interval. And number 3, select every nth case for your sample. For example, consider the selection of 10 out of 100 houses. In order to find a systematic random sample, number 1, the sampling interval is calculated by the ratio 100 divided by 10, which is equal to 10. Number 2, a number randomly in the range of 1 through 10 is selected. So let's say we select number 7. Number 3, each nth case is selected for the sample, which is 7, 17, 27, 37, 47, 57, 67, 77, 87, and 97. The third probability, design and stratified random sampling. In stratified random sampling, a population of interest is separated into groups to ensure inclusive representation. A simple random or systematic sample is taken from each group. The number of subjects drawn from each group can be proportional or non-proportional to the total population. So in our house example, let's say we have 100 houses and we want to select a sample size of 10 houses. So we want to start by categorizing 100 houses into a strata or sampling frame of 2 and 3 bedroom houses. Let's say the population size contains 30% 2-bedroom houses and 70% 3-bedroom houses. Therefore, the top row of houses in our diagram would represent proportional stratified sampling, and the second row, non-proportional stratified sampling. The fourth and final probability design we will discuss in this chapter is cluster sampling. Cluster sampling is a sampling method wherein the population is divided into groups that are already clustered in certain areas, and a sample is taken from these clusters by simple random sampling or systematic random sampling. This type of sampling is not a complete representation of the population. With non-probability samples, we may or may not represent the population well, and it will often be hard for us to know how well we've done. So in general, quantitative researchers prefer probability or random sampling methods over non-probability methods and consider them to be more accurate and rigorous. The non-probability sampling designs we will discuss are convenience, purposive, quota, and snowball. Availability, convenience sampling occurs when a sample is collected in a convenient manner, usually from volunteers. For example, collecting surveys from a shopping mall yielding a lot of data at a low price. This type of sampling is also considered haphazard sampling. Quota sampling is a process whereby a researcher gathers data from a targeted number of non-randomly selected individuals possessing identified characteristics. This is generally done to ensure the inclusion of a particular segment of the population. The proportions may or may not differ dramatically from the actual proportion in the population. This type of sampling is similar to stratified sampling, except it involves a non-random selection process and does not require a sampling frame. Purposeful sampling is the process whereby the researcher selects a non-representative subset of some larger population that is constructed to serve a very specific need or purpose. For example, a study of female school superintendents, or a subset of a population like high school guidance counselors who deal with ninth graders. Rubin and Rubin, 1995, suggest interviewees in a purposeful sampling design should pass two tests, a test for completeness and a test for saturation. Snowball sampling is a sampling technique that is used by researchers to identify potential subjects and studies where subjects are hard to locate. For instance, if you wish to find mathematics teachers that have worked in industry as either mathematicians or engineers, and you know of only one or two such people, you can start with them and ask them to recommend others who have worked in industry as either mathematicians or engineers and are now teaching mathematics. Although this method hardly leads to representative samples, it may sometimes be the only way to locate hard-to-reach populations. Additional sampling concerns/comments. Sampling bias is when researchers consciously or unconsciously select subjects that skew their findings. Unnecessary sampling is when units in the population are the same.